So uploading your data to Bold. There we go. That's Bold. Hello. There are various videos that the Bold team have made that are really good and are much better than me, but they go into much greater depth. So I'm not going to show those videos. I think we'll just provide them as part of the handbook and things like that. They also have a really good handbook themselves. It's really good. Whenever I speak to someone at Bold and go, yeah, I really wish you guys did this, they're like, have you looked at the handbook? Did we do that? I'm like, I just don't read. So go there and get the handbook, and it walks you through every step of the way, which is great. There's an example of the contents, for example, so submitting specimen data, custom fields, images, trace files, whatever those are. And we're going to talk about submitting specimen data today. So again, it's got very good details about what to do. And it's got, for every field in the resulting spreadsheet that I'll show you, it's got the column name and then definitions of what should and shouldn't go in there. So it's really, really good for that. So I'm not going to spend time doing that today. Here is our project. And it says 0 specimens, but it actually now has 2. Because I uploaded the 2 leeches from our Ukrainian colleagues this morning, but I didn't take a new snapshot. So it's got 2 specimens. And they both sequenced. And they both have species identifications. So that's great. So there'll be 2 and 2 over there in the near future. You go to, within your project, so you select your project on the console, you would go to Uploads, Specimen Data. There's also specimen images, sequences, and trace files if you are still Sanger sequencing. But at the end of this workshop, no one's ever going to touch Sanger again, are they? No. Right, and you can do it in single mode or batch mode. So you get this page. If you're doing a single specimen or a few, it's very quick to just do them one at a time through here. The fields that are red are required, so you need to have a sample ID. You need to have either a field ID or a museum ID, and then you need to put in the institution that where the voucher is being stored. Everything else, fill out as much as you possibly can, but phylum is the only thing that's actually required when it comes to the taxonomy.
Did anyone fill in the BGE metadata sheet?
People have, yeah. Yeah. People have, yeah. Well, so in, yes, because this is a screenshot from the BGE container. So if I go to the next page, you have the option to add your own custom fields. We love custom fields, don't we? Yeah, we we sit down in the morning and say, what other fields could I add to the spreadsheet?
Is this not enough?
Yeah, exactly. You may recognize a little polite tension there where I'm kind of like, do we need these fields? And everyone's like, yeah. And by the end of the project, yeah, exactly. Yeah, where data goes to die. Notes. Yeah, exactly. I think at the end of this project, we're going to have an analysis of how many of these fields were used. There'll probably be 1 record in each one of the fields, yeah. But you can add your own custom data fields. So in the BGE project, we've got things like the plate identifier, the well position, the institution ID, additional ID. Great. What does that mean? Type of additional ID. This is all text, of course. So Rutger loves it. Yeah. Dates and various other things. Yeah, like type status, which is oddly not included in the standard bold things. But I guess no, people weren't really sequencing types. Yeah, date of identification. Yeah. Yeah, because taxonomy is obviously fluid, changes over time. Those things, yeah. And we're going to, I think, they're custom for now, but as bold improves, we will see how many of these actually make sense to that everyone should have them, you know, as an option at least, anyway. So we should make sure that it's a 4-digit date. Yeah. And of course, it would be more sensible to use the ISO standard date rather than just this. Yeah. But the cool, so just this is just to highlight that it's super flexible. You can add as many or as few custom fields as you want. We're kind of using the workbench as a a database for the entire project, really, which is not what it was designed for. But rather than a LIMS system across multiple sequencing facilities and all those sorts of things, we just thought, well, the records are going to go into bold, so let's just try and keep as much of the data with those records in bold. Yeah. But then for that, we need this custom data to be publicly visible, which it isn't, or at least via the API or something. Yeah. So I do sometimes request intelligent things. Sometimes. If you're doing a batch submission, it asks you, do you want to add new records or update existing records? We're going to add new records, but if you do update existing records, you've got to be really careful, because the mechanism is you download a spreadsheet of the records to update, and say you want to update just one field, that's great. But if you make a mistake in any of the other fields on any of those records, you re-upload that spreadsheet and it will overwrite what was previously there with what you've changed. So you need to just be really careful with that. Unfortunately, the mechanism we have to use with all the custom data and everything is that you first upload the standard data, then you have to download the sheet. It now has all the fields for the custom fields, and then you have to fill those in and then re-upload it. And that is not a very safe way of managing a lot of data. So that needs to be resolved. So that's just flagging. If you are updating records, just really be careful with your spreadsheets. There is a template, so you'd go to the next page. Version 3.1 is what they're currently on. Download the template, and then you would just fill out the template, come back, upload it. They're really amazing. It goes through a manual curation step at bold. So this is great. The data goes through a manual curation step. If you're trying to ram in a species name that doesn't exist because it's misspelt or something like that, they will stop it from going in there. That is great. We need a semi-automated curation for the sequence data that goes in and says this sequence is matching a different species name. Are you 100% sure you want to upload this to bold? You know, that sort of thing. Not there yet, but hopefully we will get there. And the team at Guelph is great. If you tick the little priority level thing, I don't know if they pay attention to it, but when I do tick that, it does get uploaded like within 8 hours. It's just brilliant. So yeah, always tick the high priority one, because the people not ticking it just go down the list, right? So anyway, they're probably going to see this and never, ever upload anything of mine again. So when you download the spreadsheet, it looks like this. It is currently a tabbed format, so there are tabs here for voucher info, taxonomy, specimen details, and collection data. I'm told at some point it will go to a single spreadsheet format, which is great. And one key thing they've updated quite recently is if you type in a sample ID here, so this is the format we're using for BGE, BGE underscore the plate number, so 0001 underscore A01. So that is a caddisfly from the Natural History Museum that was sampled recently. When you type that in, it will now automatically populate that number in all the other tabs. It didn't used to do that before, which is a bit of a nightmare, because you can imagine in Excel copying and pasting. This is the taxonomy one. And the specimen details and the collecting information for that. These are not all mandatory. As I said, there's only about 5 mandatory fields. BGE, what we did was we took all of these, shoved them into one tab, right? And then added all of our custom fields at the end, created the widest spreadsheet known to mankind. And the idea is that people can easily fill that out in one spreadsheet, and then we can just have some macro, turn it back into 4 tabs. Right, then you take that, you go back to that page I previously showed, you upload it, it goes to bold, they check it, and then within a couple of hours or a day or two, it gets uploaded if there are no issues. This is our container in BGE. Ignore sequence fail and these tags that I mentioned earlier. So I added these tags here because I was doing some playing to see what was available via the API and via the public records so that I could bug Sujeevan to make changes so that we could use it to track samples. This extra info actually does go into the public record here. So, and it could be updated in batch by the sequencing centers. So unless Rutger comes up with a smarter solution, we'll probably end up doing something, and he will, we'll probably end up doing something like doing that, and then on all the records, it'll tell you at what status that record is in the pipeline. Yeah. Fabian who's our Perl whiz, would be able to then script pulling that up and summarizing it, which is quite cool. Anyway, so this is the current record list in the BGE container. Ignore that, seeing as I'm work package 6 lead. They're coming. There's lots coming, but just ignore that for now. By Barcelona, there'll be numbers in there that are not 0. The reason I showed this is just because you get all your records on the page here, and you can select one of the records. So here's a wonderful little moth from Norway, I believe, or no, from Crete, but from from Crete. There we go. Hey, but from a Norwegian partner, and you can see the sort of data that you see on a specimen record in bold. It includes the custom fields, but I think they are just off the screen here, basically. Yeah, there they are. The custom fields down there, which is great. The pictures that you can see, you can tag them. So this is a public record. You can go and then tag it because you're logged in, and say something like that's not a moth, for example, whatever you want to say. But yeah, this is also editable. So if you are the owner of this record, you can go in there and edit the specimen individually, or you can do batch edits through the spreadsheet, as I mentioned. And that was a much faster version 2 of Ben. So there's time for lots of questions if you want to talk about bold upload. Thank you. Take this moment to have a chocolate. Any questions? Yes. It can. It's not automatic. It doesn't happen without you asking it to happen. So you can select a bunch of records on bold, and you can say, put these in GenBank for me. And then it packages them nicely to go to GenBank and does all of that for you. But you have to do it. In a perfect world, and not knowing a dangerous amount about databases and coding, just enough to get me into trouble and not get me out of trouble at the other end. In a perfect world, bold would be a metadata and clustering layer on top of GenBank and ENA, so that the data was in there, backed up all over the place, and had all those functionalities and tools that those databases have. However, bold would be a view into that data. But that's not how it started. Maybe some years from now, that's how it'll end up. Yeah. What's that called? COINR. Yeah. Okay. And so it's really cool that they can do that. But what they need to do is then, once they've matched those sorts of things, is take that information and give it to the original databases so that they can put that metadata back in, right? So that then you don't have to continually do that. It's like GBIF. GBIF is great, but our complaining about the data quality on GBIF is kind of pointless because we do all this sort of cleaning and then we don't feed any of that information back to the original databases so that they can fix the data. Yeah. 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 Yeah, and everyone's got their own pipelines and their own thresholds and all this. It's just, it's a house of cards. Yeah. I would assume it's more software focused. Yeah. I don't know, but I would assume it's more more automated these days. It's great. It's a little frustrating because if you are doing gap filling, for example, which is our entire project, then you're constantly putting in new species and you have to justify those new species, which makes perfect sense, but is frustrating. It would be nice if there was a more automated way of doing that, Like for example, if Bold took the catalog of life snapshot and sucked it in every year, and if you matched to one of those, they were happy to accept it without an email going, prove to me this is an actual species. You have to go dig out the original publication and all those sorts of things. Yeah. But I love you guys, love Bold, just in case you watch this. Oh, thank you.